Math 2414, review, trig identities, reciprocal identities and their variations. So far in this series of videos, we've unearthed 3 Pythagorean identities and 2 quotient identities. As I mentioned in the previous video about quotient identities, there exist more of them. Identities where the ratio of 2 trig functions simplifies to a third trig function. I invited you to try to find some of your own. All you have to do is pick 2 trig functions whose definitions in terms of opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse, whose definitions are 2 fractions where either the top matches or the bottom matches. That way when you put them on top of each other, eventually something cancels, leaving you with one ratio, aka a new trig function. But let's get to reciprocal identities, and I'm not even going to waste time deriving them. These are based off of definitions. I'm just going to list them over here. Let's see. The first one is secant of theta is equal to 1 over cosine of theta. Now, by the way, the reciprocal relationship is a two-way street. If I say secant is the reciprocal of cosine, then cosine is the reciprocal of secant. In other words, I could write cosine theta equals 1 over secant theta. Typically, I write them like these because we're trying to define things in terms of sine, cosine, and theta. Cosecant of theta is the reciprocal of sine of theta. Again, this should be evident from the definitions. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. And I'll be honest, the only way I remember the definition of cosecant is by remembering that it's the reciprocal of sine. And cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. Again, each one of these has 2 variations by isolating different trig functions. If we isolated cosine of theta in the top one, it would say cosine theta equals 1 over secant. If we isolated sine theta in the second, it would say sine theta equals 1 over cosecant theta. And if we isolated tangent in the third one, it would say tangent theta equals 1 over cotangent theta. I guess in a bizarre sense, you could also isolate the 1. For example, the first one, if you isolated the 1, it would say secant theta times cosecant theta equals 1. But the fact that secant and cosecant are reciprocals means their product is supposed to be 1. Same thing here. Sine theta times cosecant theta equals 1. Tangent theta times cotangent theta equals 1. So there's really not a lot to say about reciprocal identities besides that's what they are. They're really just a direct consequence of the definitions of the trig functions, and you need to know them.